Happy New Year's and welcome back to the channel. And I just want to say thank you so much for 20,000 subscribers. I don't even know how I got here. I'm so glad that you guys are a part of the channel and this little community that we've made. If this is your very first video, I'm Jeremiah Peoples, but for this video, I'll be Staff Sergeant Jeremiah Peoples of the United States Air Force. And that's because this video is all about military money. And if you know me at all, you know I love talking stocks, credit cards, finances, real estate. So I'm super excited to get into this video and break down military salaries and at the very end, my salary. But before we get started, let's get into some disclaimers. I am in the military, but I do not speak professionally on behalf of the United States Air Force or the United States military. So let's get out of this. Ooh, there we go. A lot more comfortable. Alright, let's continue with the disclaimers. This video is purely educational and not meant to inspire or encourage anyone to join based off these finance figures alone. Next up, military members are public employees, so all this information I'm going to share with you is public information. You can look it up. I'll share the links right below the like button. Go ahead and smash that. But honestly, feel free to do your own due diligence, trust but verify. Check out those sites for yourself if you want to. But I mean, I'm a pretty trustworthy guy, so everything is going to be 100% on the dot, and there's going to be no errors at all. Alright, let's talk about how I'm going to present all of this information, because it's a ton of information. There are literally like 1.5 million different types of ways you can get paid in the military.
Literally?
Not literally.
Based on if you speak Russian, if you have a child, if you're married, if you live in Florida versus Texas. There's a lot of different types of pay in the military. So I'm going to break this up into two parts. I'm going to break this video up into two parts. The first part is going to be straight baseline salary. No incentives, no nothing. This is what you're going to get paid if you just are in the military. In the second part, I'm going to show you some incentives and different ways you can get paid by going over exactly how much I got paid in 2020 as an active duty enlisted member of the United States Air Force. If you're still here, congratulations, you made it to part one where I talk about the basic pay, like just right out of the box is where you're going to get paid. Military paychecks are comprised of 3 components, and that's your base pay, money for food, BAS, and money for housing, BAH. And what you get paid is based off of 3 factors: your rank, your time in service, and if you have dependents or not, like a wife or a child. It doesn't matter if you're an enlisted E3 who's working in the neuroscience division, or if you're a cop in the military, your baseline salary is going to be the same for every person in that rank. It's obviously very early in 2021, so I'm not quite sure the government has agreed upon the new payment for 2021, so I'm going to use the 2020 pay chart. I'm going to use an example. I can hear there's firecrackers going off in the background. So let's say we have Airman Billy Bob, and he's been serving for over 3 years. He's a single airman, and he's an E3. His base pay is going to be $2,303 for being single and E3 with over 3 years of service. All right, let's talk about BAH. That's basic allowance for housing. And this is money for wherever you're living, and that's either going to be on base or off base. If you're just joining the military and you're a single soldier, you're most definitely probably always going to be living on base and either in a military provided barrack, or in the Air Force we call them dorms because we're special. A barrack or a dorm is just a living quarters that the military provides you at no cost. Well, there's kind of a cost. Let's talk about that. If you're living in base provided housing, the military will pay you your BAH, your allowance for housing, and then they'll take it right out because they're giving you a free place to stay. My dorm wasn't too bad. I had like a full-size bed, not too many dorm inspections, and a kitchen I share with a suite mate, so they're not terrible all the times. In the Air Force, I should say. On the other hand, if you have a dependent or your base just allows you to move off a base, the military will pay you a amount of money to find a place to either rent or buy with your VA loan. Now, how much money they give you depends on, once again, a couple of factors. Your rank, if you have dependents, and where you live. So I'm gonna go over to a handy dandy site called BAH Calculator, plug in a zip code. Let's say Airman Billy Bop is living in Langley, Virginia, and see how much extra money in rent the military is gonna give him. All right, so it looks like Airman Billy Bop, being a single E3 living in Langley, Virginia, would make $1,911. The fun thing about BAH is you don't have to use all of it. If your apartment or the house that you bought only costs $1,000 per month in rent or in mortgage, you get to pocket the extra. And BAH is adjusted every year to account for inflation. Last but not least, the military pays you a good amount for food. They call it BAS, Basic Allowance for Sustenance. Now, for the last 4.5 years that I've been in, BAS typically sits around $350 to $370. I think right now it's about $370. However, BAS doesn't always land directly in your pocket. Dialing back to the BAH thing, if you live on base and you have a job that allows you to make it to the dining facility, a dining facility is like a cafeteria, but that $370 that the military pays you, if you live on base and you can make it to a dining facility, then they'll take that right out and be like, hey, just go eat at the DFAC. DFACs are alright food. It's usually like a buffet, unless you're in the Marines. Then it's usually a selection of the finest Crayola crayons. But if you work a weird job, like you're a military cop and you can't make it to the DFAC during normal hours, or you live off base, the military will trust you with that $370 directly in your pocket, and hopefully you can figure out how to feed yourself for a month with that $370. With the 3 factors for base salary that I just went over with, BAH, BAS, and base salary for a single airman E3 living off base in 2020, here's his salary makeup based off those figures. For his base pay, it's going to be $27,636. For his total food pay, it's going to be $4,440. And since he lives in Langley, Virginia, his basic allowance for housing is going to be $22,932, making his grand total salary before taxes $55,008. But being in the United States military, we get a ton of free benefits. A couple of them are going to be free healthcare, so none of that money is ever going to go to healthcare. I think I've had like 3 surgeries since I've been in and paid $0. And the only thing that's taxable of that base salary is going to be the base pay. So for the government tax purposes, the government only is going to treat him like he makes $22,000. Alright, welcome to part 2 of the video where we talk about all the extra types of incentives you can make and breaking down my personal salary for 2020. The military doesn't give out Christmas bonuses or anything like that, but there is a ton of different ways to get that extra bread. For example, if you go on business trips, you can get per diem. If you speak Russian, they'll pay you extra for that. If you fly in a helicopter for your primary job, there's a million different incentives. So instead of just listing all the incentives out, I'm going to break down what I made and the incentives that I used in 2020. I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I even get into the incentives that I use, let's talk about me for a second so that we can kind of calculate my base pay without anything on top. No cherry on top, no nothing, no incentives. There's gonna be a ton of different numbers, so bear with me. So my base salary for 2020 is a bit complicated because I ranked up right in the middle. So let's go over how that worked out. In the beginning of 2020, I was an E4. It's a senior airman living in Florida. I had over 3 years time in the military, time in service. Oh, and I was single. How can I forget? No dependents. My base salary was $2,507. My BAH was $1,371, and plus the $370 for food, which does not matter for your rank or dependent status. So that works out to $4,248 times 6, because half the month I was spent at that rank, grade, and pay, which is $25,488 for the first 6 months of my base pay as a senior airman or a E4. Then a couple things happened that changed my pay. I promoted to E5, which is Staff Sergeant in the Air Force, and my time in service also went over to over 4 years, which then would increase my base pay and whatnot. So for the last 6 months, my new base pay was $2,891 per month. My updated BAH, basic allowance for housing, was $1,470, and I still got the same money for food, $370. So that works out to $4,731 per month, and I made that base salary for the last 6 months of 2020, totaling $28,386 for the last 6 months of 2020 as a staff sergeant with over 4 years of military service. So many numbers. That brings my whole entire salary for 2020, where I spent half of it as an E4 senior airman and the other half as a E5 staff sergeant, to $53,874 before tax. Without any further ado, geez Louise, sorry, I feel like I've been teasing you guys with these incentives. So let's get into how I pulled in some extra money in 2020. Now sometimes people deploy. I deployed in 2019, I made like an extra $13,000. But in 2020, I did a long-term business trip to Los Angeles, which we call a long-term TDY. On the other part of the channel, the tech side of this channel, I'm a software engineer, and there was a opportunity to work with VMware and Space Force on some applications for satellites, and I was like, that sounds like me, sign me up. So I took advantage of the opportunity, interviewed, and they sent me out there for, again, 6 months. So this is basically the equivalent to like a civilian business trip. So let's just say I'm on a business trip for 6 months. And when you're on a business trip in the military, you get 2 types of pay. I mean, outside of your plane ticket to get you there, they pay for what it costs to live there. And that breaks down into 2 parts: how much a hotel or an apartment is, and how much it costs for food. They call that per diem, which is a Latin term that translates loosely into drinking money. So surprise, surprise, Los Angeles, specifically Santa Monica where I was staying, is pretty expensive. So my housing was a bit up there. My total maxed out housing per month was $7,500 per month to find an apartment or to stay in a hotel. The thing about Department of Defense housing allowances for business trips or long-term TDY is you can't pocket the extra like you can your BAH at home. So it's in your best interest to kind of, you know, why not? So I didn't end up using the full $7,500 that I was allotted. I only used I used $5,000 per month for my rent in Santa Monica. And since I couldn't pocket that extra money, the military basically paid me that $5,000 and then I immediately paid that $5,000 directly to my apartment. So I never really even touched that money. We'll count it. We'll throw it in there because it did cost that amount of money to live there for 6 months. Now the other part is the per diem, the drinking money, the whatever, the who has it, what it costs to eat wherever you're located, and there's a calculator to figure out how much you can get paid based on where you're at. For me in Santa Monica, that rate was about $71 per day that I could use for food, and I could pocket the rest. So if I only had a $2 PB&J the whole entire day, I could save the extra $69 in my pocket, and I could do that day in and day out for that entire 6 months, and that's basically what I did. I am not a huge food person, so I ate the same exact things every single day, and I saved as much money into my pocket as possible. $71 times about 30, I think that's about $2,100-ish per month that was going directly into my pocket for food. So for my duration in Los Angeles, I was able to pocket $12,780 based off that per diem money, and another $30,000 of that I was paid, and then I paid my apartment in Los Angeles, making the grand total for my extra money incentives in Los Angeles $42,780 extra for that 6 months. And I still love that company so much, so if you're a Section 31 lad or a VMware employee, go ahead and comment in the description because I miss you guys so much. But wait, there's more. With the BAH that the military gave me, I used the VA loan and bought my own house, which is a 3-bedroom house. And of those 3 bedrooms, I rented out one of those bedrooms for the full year for $600 to my best friend Chad, who's currently in Germany on a business trip making a ton of extra incentive pay. So Chad paid me rent, and that rent totaled $7,200 for all of 2020. And for the last 2 months, I got another roommate, and he pays me again $600 on the dot for 2 months. Then that is $1,200. The amount of rent that I'm bringing in from my tenants or my buddies, my friends, to live at my house is $8,400. While that's not directly a military benefit, the military did give me the money to pay for this house, so technically it counts. So that makes my total income for 2020 $105,000 for the year. If you don't want to count my LA $30,000 apartment money, you can just take off $30,000 from that. That is how much you can stand to make in the military. And I know not everyone's gonna have a 6-month business trip to Los Angeles, but again, that's just my personal situation. And again, there's foreign language pay. There's other business trips to Germany, New York, Boston, DC. Again, there's a million different ways you can get paid. But this was how I got paid in 2020. I have been immensely, incredibly blessed to be able to join the military in the first place. I was rejected the first 4 times when I initially tried to sign up for the military, so I'm blessed that I'm even here in the first place. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already joined the family already, go ahead and subscribe. Like this video, share it with your friends if they're interested in joining the military and they're curious on how much the military can pay. And like always, I will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace out.